Manny is one of the strongest fighters in a world cursed by a monster-making red rain. Feared by all as the blood-soaked bleacher, he trusts no one and fights only to protect his orphan family. But when his home is destroyed by fanatics and his sister is infected by the Crimson Curse, he has no choice but to join the Crimson Cloud Bleachers, an elite team of powerful, eccentric warriors on a mission to destroy the sky itself. Their first target is a godlike zealot who created the very hell they're trying to escape.
Some said that certain butterflies were capable of flying above the clouds. Despite the extreme cold and the dangers that awaited them there, they had the courage to venture that high. Yet, no matter how far they went, they were always forced back down in search of a flower, for no butterfly could exist without one. But then came the question, what happened when a butterfly's flower turned red? Would the brave creatures simply give up, or would it dare to rise above the clouds once again? A man walked along a desolate path, dragging the corpse of a slain monster behind him. He dropped the heavy carcass to the ground and pulled back his hood, his gaze lifting toward the sky. Above him, the heavens had turned a deep crimson, raining down drops the color of blood. He muttered quietly to himself, wondering aloud how many lives the sky's crimson tears would claim that day. Pulling his hood back over his head, he prepared to leave with his catch. But before he could, a voice called out from behind. 4 men stood there, one of them with striking blonde hair. The blonde one remarked that the man had made a good catch and suggested he share it with them. Among the group, one recognized who the hooded man truly was. Fear gripped him, his eyes widening as he stammered to his companions that he knew this man. He was the blood-soaked bleacher. His urgent warning told them they should leave at once. The blonde man, however, laughed it off. Conjuring a ball of fire in his hand, he mocked the hooded stranger, saying that the title was nothing to be afraid of, since they too were bleachers. Hurling the flame forward, he added that they could handle a mere child. The hooded man sidestepped the attack effortlessly. His eyes lifted toward them with an intensity that froze the group in place. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably as they realized they could no longer move. Panic set in as they wondered what was happening to them. The one who had recognized him whispered that he had warned them. The hooded figure took a step closer. Behind him, a dark, monstrous image seemed to form, radiating an aura so overwhelming and sinister that all 4 men shook violently with terror. He walked past them without a word, his oppressive presence alone rendering them powerless to act. Only after he was gone did they collapse in relief, gasping for breath. One muttered in confusion about what that overwhelming force had been, while another dismissed him bitterly as a freak. Still trembling, the blonde man clenched his teeth, vowing through his anger that he would one day make the hooded man pay. Later, the hooded figure arrived at a trading post to sell the monster's corpse. The deal was finalized without issue, and the trader, a young woman named Vesta, handed him the money with a cheerful remark that it was a fine catch and would keep him well for some time. She encouraged him to support the community by spending some of it at the local shops. He replied dryly that it was not as if he had anywhere else to spend it. Vesta appreciated his spirit regardless. As he stepped outside, Vesta called out warmly, waving that she hoped to see him again and urging him to take care. Another worker standing behind her frowned, warning her that there was no need to be so friendly. He reminded her that they should not be getting close to bleachers. Vesta smirked, slapping him lightly on the back. She countered that he was just a kid, and went on to reflect that the world had once been beautiful and prosperous. Now children in contaminated zones were forced to survive the hard way, stealing themselves and sacrificing too much. At the very least, she felt she could offer them a small reminder of what life used to be. Her expression grew heavy with concern as she admitted how terrifying it must be to grow up in rundown slums at the edge of the crimson cloud. Meanwhile, the hooded man, whose name was Manny, walked back through the streets toward his home. Relief softened his features when he saw his family. Children played outside, chasing one another, while a woman scolded a boy named Bo, begging him to stop his mischief. A smile touched his face as he exhaled quietly, reassured by the sight. The children spotted him and ran with joy, welcoming him back home. Manny, however, frowned slightly as he asked what they were all doing outside. Two of the little ones threw themselves into his arms, clinging to him.
Nearby, a stranger stood silently under an umbrella, a cake in his hand. Manny demanded to know who the man was. The woman explained that the stranger had introduced himself as a friend of Manny's parents, even knowing their names. The children had grown fond of him as well, delighted that he had brought them a cake. Manny told everyone to take the bags and head inside quickly before the rain began again. But the stranger raised his voice, insisting there was no need to send them inside. Stepping forward, he claimed he would protect them if the rain fell, holding the umbrella and cake out as a gesture. After a pause, he finally introduced himself as Varun. Manny narrowed his eyes and asked what Varun truly wanted. Varun laughed, spreading his arms wide. He asked if Manny did not hate the world, arguing that everyone trapped in the contaminated zones shared the same hatred. He explained that he was assembling a team of special bleachers and wanted Manny to join him. He spoke of their mission to bleach the Crimson Cloud and end the agony of the Red Rain, proudly naming them the Crimson Cloud Bleachers, CCB for short. Manny's eyes widened in shock at the proposition. Varun pressed further, declaring that everything had a weakness, even the Crimson Cloud. Then he turned his gaze on Manny, claiming that Manny's weakness was his siblings. He pointed out that Manny could not save the children alone and offered him a deal. If Manny joined CCB, he would ensure the safety of Manny's family, allowing Manny to fight without holding back. Manny stood silent for a moment, memories of someone dying in his arms during the Red Rain flashing across his mind. His fists clenched tightly before he rejected the offer outright. He accused Varun of putting his siblings in danger and then daring to call them a weakness. He swore that he would protect his family himself and that he needed no one else. Varun's sharp gaze held him, saying that Manny knew he was not wrong. He urged Manny not to decide right away, telling him to think carefully about how the world truly made him feel at his core. As he turned to leave, he promised they would talk again once Manny had an answer. But Manny stopped him. He called out that there were two things Varun must do before leaving. First, he demanded Varun take the cloaked men waiting nearby and never return. Second, he told him to leave the cake. Varun departed. Manny walked into his home carrying the cake. As soon as he stepped through the door, the children and the woman apologized nervously. Manny quickly embraced them, his voice heavy with emotion, as he reassured them that everything was fine, that the man would not return, and that he only wanted to check on them. He suggested they enjoy the cake together. The children giggled that it was already his since they had eaten plenty, but Manny insisted on sharing. They laughed, ate, and talked late into the night. Later, as Manny brushed his teeth with two of the children while the woman chased Bo through the house, he felt at peace. They all went to sleep together. That night, Manny dreamed of his childhood. He saw himself running through the crimson rain, searching desperately for his mother. The scene shifted to him kneeling beside her lifeless body. A man holding an umbrella appeared in the memory, sheltering them both from the scarlet downpour. Suddenly, a massive eye stared at him through the vision, and a voice thundered that he was not welcome. He awoke to someone shouting for him to get up. Flames engulfed the house. Manny huddled in a corner with his family, confused and horrified. Outside, he overheard voices. One man urgently told another that there were children inside, but the other scoffed that it did not matter, declaring they could die together before telling his companion it was time to flee. Fury erupted in Manny as he heard this. Rising to his feet, he urged his family to run, but the roof began to crack above them. The children closed their eyes in terror, and Manny stood silent for a moment, overwhelmed with emotion. The roof collapsed, burning as it fell. A massive beam was about to crush them, but Manny caught it, straining under its weight. He ordered his family to get out. Before they could move, a drop of red rain slipped through the shattered ceiling. Manny froze. Then the rain came pouring down in earnest. He shouted for his family to stay together and not let the crimson drops touch them. They huddled beneath the beam he held aloft.
A rat outside was struck by the rain and instantly transformed into a monster. Then, from the flames, a gigantic fire beast rose, roaring with fury. Manny trembled under the weight pressing down on him, his body giving way as his knees bent. He remembered Varun's words, reminding him that he could not protect the children alone, that he would not be able to save them from this world. Suddenly, Bo slipped away from the group, and Manny shouted his name in terror. The woman lunged forward, catching the boy in her arms. Memories of his mother's death returned, overlapping with Varun's hunting voice, asking how this world truly made him feel in his soul. Manny's rage boiled over, his eyes burning red as a dark aura swirled around him. He declared to himself that for putting his family in danger, he would unleash his full wrath upon the world. A surge of energy exploded outward from him. The crimson raindrops froze in midair. The woman holding Bo looked up in awe at the suspended rain as the fire monster burned even more violently. The children and the woman trembled in fear at the sight of Manny himself. Blood dripped from his nose as his expression turned pained. Inwardly, he cursed, realizing he could not hold both the ceiling and the rain. He admitted silently that Varun had been right, that he could not protect them all from this world, nor from the crimson cloud.
Manny's thoughts swirled with despair. He told himself that he could not protect them, no matter how much they had been entrusted to him. He wanted them to live a happy and peaceful life, to walk beneath the open sky without fearing the red rain. But he admitted to himself that he was not strong enough. He silently apologized, calling himself a bad brother as the beam he was holding above them began to crack under the strain. Suddenly, Varun appeared, holding his umbrella. With calm urgency, he asked Cherry and Dalia to step in. Manny turned his head in shock as a figure emerged, Cherry, now displaying monstrous abilities. Cherry leapt at the beast that had taken form from the mouse, striking it down with ease, and muttering that it had been a weakling. Casting a glance at Manny, he sneered that Manny could not even handle such a simple creature. The fire monster roared again, and from above, Dalia descended gracefully, floating in the air. With a gesture of her hand, she unleashed her power against the creature. She chastised Cherry, saying that not everyone was a monster like him. Her attack struck the fire beast with crushing force, bringing it down. Manny stood frozen, shocked by the power she displayed. As Dalia landed, Cherry shot back at her bitterly, claiming she was one to talk. Manny remained silent, still straining to shield his family. Varun, with a smile, reminded them that they should be glad no one had been hurt. Manny looked upward and saw Varun floating above with his umbrella, shielding his family from the crimson rain. Varun remarked that he was relieved they had arrived in time, and when the downpour eased, he glanced toward the clouds, commenting that it was finally letting up and that Manny had nothing to fear anymore. But Manny's frustration burned. His teeth ground together and his fists clenched as anger surged through him. The children and the woman stared at him with concern until Manny suddenly pulled them close into an embrace, asking if they were all safe. His voice cracked as he apologized, admitting that he had failed to protect them. The children and the woman hugged him tightly, insisting that he should not say such things. They told him he had saved them and that he had been amazing. Jerry and Dalia watched the moment in silence, while Varun observed with a quiet smile. Manny eventually turned, fists tightening, and thanked the three of them for saving his family. Varun told him not to mention it, but added that it was not over yet. Manny frowned, uncertain of his meaning. From behind a cluster of rocks, voices drifted out. Men were whispering in panic. One cursed that no one had told me Manny had friends. Another snapped back that the rumors said Manny worked alone. A third hissed at them to be quiet, urging them to flee before they were noticed. Varun called Cherry's name, and Cherry began to walk toward the rocks with his fists clenched, but Manny stepped in front of him, wiping the blood from his nose. Varun cautioned him not to go overboard, but Manny's eyes burned with resolve. He said he wanted to handle them himself. These were the ones who had attacked his family. He added that he did not want his family to witness what he was about to do. The men hiding behind the rocks broke into a run. Manny recognized them as the same four he had encountered earlier while returning from his hunt. His aura darkened, his eyes blazing red as he coldly muttered that he would be gentle. With each step forward, an evil energy radiated from him, heavy and suffocating. The four men stopped and turned, activating their powers. The blonde-haired one shouted that if it came to this, they would stand and fight. Together, they claimed they could bend all four elements: earth, wind, water, and fire. The blonde one launched a wave of fire at Manny, but Manny dodged with impossible speed. In the blink of an eye, he was upon the man, blood swirling around his clenched fist. The The blond man's eyes widened in shock and fear just before Manny drove him into the ground with a devastating punch. The others faltered. One cried that they could not win and urged the others to flee. Varun, Cherry, and Dalia stood by, watching in silence. The children cheered for Manny, encouraging him to beat the intruders, while the woman shielded Bo's eyes from the brutal scene. Moments later, the fight was over. The four men lay defeated, sprawled across the ground. Varun turned to the woman, Naomi, and told her that it had been dangerous to rush into the crimson rain to save her brother. He studied her closely, then remarked with relief that he saw no signs of exposure. He urged her to join the others. Nearby, the children were laughing, tugging at Cherry's tail despite his protests. Manny smiled softly at Naomi, muttering that he was glad she was unharmed. Varun commented that she had been lucky, otherwise they might have found themselves dealing with another bleacher, or something far worse. Varun then asked Manny if he had reconsidered his offer to join them. Manny remained silent, his gaze lingering on his family. Cherry shouted at the children to leave him alone, but they only giggled that his tail was fluffy. Naomi scolded them gently, telling them not to bother him. Cherry snapped that he was not a dog, his frustration only fueling their laughter. Manny pressed a hand to his chest, a strange sensation tightening within him. Varun noticed and asked if he was all right. Dalia cast him a look but said nothing, turning to walk away. Before leaving, she shot Manny a cold glare that left him wondering what he had done wrong. Varun explained that Dalia had merely delayed Manny's wounds for a short while, warning him to brace himself for the pain would return soon. Manny straightened and began to address Varun about his offer when a sudden cry broke the moment. Varun's eyes snapped toward Naomi, and he called her name in alarm. Manny turned quickly, his breath catching as he saw what was happening. To their horror, Naomi's hand had begun to twist and transform unnaturally. Despite their relief earlier, she had been struck by the crimson rain after all.
Varun, Cherry, Dalia, and the children stood frozen in shock as they saw Naomi's arm begin to twist and transform. Manny cried out her name in panic, his voice filled with desperation as he watched the change spread. Naomi herself stood motionless, her eyes wide with terror, calling out to her brother for help. Manny shouted in disbelief, insisting that it could not be happening, before lunging forward with a desperate cry that he would not allow it. But before he could reach her, Varun seized him by the arm, holding him back with unexpected force. With a calm but firm command, he ordered Dalia to move ahead. Manny, furious and trembling, ripped his arm free from Varun's grip and yelled at him in anger, demanding to know why he was stopping him. Varun, however, remained composed, telling him simply to watch. Sweat formed on Manny's face as Dalia snapped her fingers, releasing a spell that surged toward Naomi. The magic enveloped her, and to Manny's astonishment, Naomi's arm slowly returned to normal. The twisted flesh smoothed, the unnatural pain vanishing as quickly as it had come. Manny stared in disbelief at what he was witnessing. The children rushed forward, voices trembling with worry, asking Naomi if she was all right. Tears streaked their faces as they clung to her, relieved when she assured them softly that she was fine now. Bo stood apart, silent and unmoving, his gaze fixed on her. Naomi turned toward him with concern, asking if he was hurt, but Bo gave no reply. Instead, he quietly placed a hand on her head and released a long sigh of relief. Naomi blinked in surprise before pulling him into a tight embrace, joined by the others. She whispered to him that she was safe now, and there was no longer any need to worry. From a short distance away, Manny watched the scene with a conflicted expression. Varun spoke to him then, warning him to calm himself or his blood would boil at this rate. He assured him that Naomi was fine now. Manny's hand trembled as he demanded to know why, if Varun had said she showed no signs of exposure earlier, this had still happened. Varun tilted his gaze skyward, replying that much about the crimson cloud was still unknown. He explained that Naomi must have been splashed by water from a puddle of rain, which, even if not pure, could still be dangerous. Yet even so, her reaction was strange. The transformation had been contained to a single arm, rather than consuming her whole, which is unlike any case he had seen. Manny frowned, confused by what Varun was implying. Varun admitted that to understand they needed to review what was already known. Manny asked if he was some sort of scientist. Varun gave a small wry smile, answering that it was something like that. He then began to explain. Since the Crimson Cataclysm 18 years earlier, the land had been forever changed. The crimson cloud had appeared, cursing the country with its deadly red rain. The black fog had swallowed the nation's center, turning it into a prison of endless death. Some who were struck by the rain survived, sometimes even gaining strange powers known as bestowments. Others were not so fortunate and transformed into mindless creatures that rampaged through the contaminated zones. These abominations were called Nephilim. That, Varun continued, is why bleachers existed, to hunt down Nephilim and trade their remains with the army guarding the passage to the outside world. Manny, impatient, told him to get to the point. Turning his attention to Naomi, Varun explained that normally, those struck by the red rain without being chosen either died instantly or became Nephilim, yet Naomi neither died nor fully transformed. Only her arm had been affected, and Dalia's powers had delayed the process further. He admitted that there was no precedent for this, and therefore no certain diagnosis. For now, thanks to Dalia, the change had been suppressed. Manny glanced at Dalia with curiosity, wondering about the true extent of her powers. Naomi, overwhelmed with gratitude, bowed her head to Dalia and addressed her as elder sister. Dalia, however, told her simply to call her by her name, saying it was nothing. Varun urged that it was best for all of them to come to headquarters. There, he explained, a doctor could examine Naomi more thoroughly. Manny muttered in surprise at the thought of a bleacher doctor, but Varun confirmed it, mentioning his old friend Ozori. Meanwhile, the children clamored over Cherry, laughing as they tugged at his fluffy tail. Cherry barked at them angrily to get off, declaring he was not a dog, though the children only laughed and said they never called him one. Varun chuckled, adding that at their base they had more bleachers, including Judah, who crafted their rain-resisting gear. They were still lacking a good cook, he admitted with a laugh. For a long moment, Manny stood in silence, watching his family. Naomi was smiling and thanking Dalia once again, while the children continued playing around Cherry. Dalia, though reserved, returned Naomi's gratitude with a quiet smile. Naomi then hurried to the children, apologizing to Cherry and promising to get them off. Cherry snapped back in frustration, demanding she not just try, but actually do it, while the children defended their sister and scolded him for yelling. When Cherry suddenly caught sight of real cherries, he transformed into his wolf form and bounded off in excitement. The children cheered at the sight, declaring how cool it was, as Naomi chased after them in an attempt to bring them back under control. Manny observed Dalia as she sighed in relief, and he walked toward her. He thanked her sincerely for saving Naomi and for her earlier aid, promising he would not forget it. Dalia turned away, offering no reply. Manny rubbed his cheek thoughtfully before remarking that she was bleeding. Dalia froze, startled, and touched her face only to find nothing there. With a dismissive turn, she told him to mind his own business and walk away. Manny said softly that he had only been trying to help. Turning back toward the ruins of his destroyed home, Manny fell silent. His expression darkened with sorrow as he reflected on how the place that had sheltered them, the home where she had raised them, was now gone. He thought of the trust that had been placed upon him to keep his siblings safe, a duty he had nearly failed. After a long silence, Manny turned to Varun and agreed. Extending his hand, he declared that he would join them. If it meant building a world where his siblings could laugh and play freely beneath the open sky without fear of crimson clouds or deadly rain, then he would do it. Varun grasped his hand firmly, smiling with satisfaction. Manny warned him that he would never do anything that conflicted with this goal. Varun reassured him that of course he would not, and welcomed him to the CCB. With resolve in his voice, Manny called the group together and announced that they would head to his vehicle and depart. He added that there was someone they needed to pick up along the way. Elsewhere, the men Manny had defeated stumbled near the edge of the crimson fog. One of them cursed bitterly, insisting that Manny had only won because of help. Another corrected him, pointing out that Manny had beaten him alone. The leader silenced him with a yell, ordering them to keep moving. They still needed to find a Nephilim to trade. One of the others warned nervously that they should not stray too close to the black fog without masks, and worried about monsters emerging. The blonde among them shouted at them to stop being cowards, claiming no monsters ever came out of the fog. But then one of them froze, staring at something moving in the shadows. A monstrous figure emerged. its form twisted and unnatural. In a deep, mocking voice, it remarked on their failure, calling them useless for not handling a single reject. The four men trembled in fear, unsure if what they were seeing was a monster. With a casual gesture of one of its many hands, the creature dismissed them. It muttered about apostles and their hopes, then turned back with a wicked grin, its forearms spreading wide. The men screamed in panic and attempted to flee, but the creature laughed darkly, calling them rude. It promised that, even if they were useless, it would still accept them. With a chilling tone, it declared they would become one, together.
During the drive to headquarters, the atmosphere inside the vehicle shifted between tense conversation and the innocent playfulness of the children. Manny expressed his gratitude to Varun for providing jackets, admitting that he had long wished to obtain some for his siblings since they offered some protection from the rain. However, the cost had always been too high. Varun explained that their high price was natural, as each jacket was custom-made. He reassured Manny that they would replace all of his and his siblings' clothes at headquarters with proper equipment, since preparation was an essential part of being a bleacher. As the children played with Cherry in the back seat, Varun revealed that they had done their research and prepared jackets for Manny's family before arriving to retrieve them, just in case. He added that aside from bleachers themselves, such materials were the only true safeguard for ordinary people in the contaminated zone. Unfortunately, most bleachers could not be relied upon. Though they gained miraculous powers after surviving the red rain, they often changed in troubling ways. Yet they remained necessary. Without bleachers to fight Nephilim, the contaminated zone would have long ago fallen to monsters. Varun acknowledged Manny's own efforts, pointing out how he had worked hard to slay Nephilim and trade them with the army for supplies. He then asked Manny if he understood why the army offered such incentives, even though they had the means to kill Nephilim themselves. The truth, Varun explained, was that the army had forced a massive wall around the entire contaminated zone, keeping everyone trapped beneath the Crimson Cloud's reach. They encouraged bleachers to do the cleaning rather than allow them to grow desperate or rebellious. Bleachers, he went on, all shared one common trait after their transformation: an unshakable need for violence. Over time, many degraded further, losing their humanity until they became little more than beasts. Rumors even spoke of the bleacher who had created the Great Wall, a figure who had since gone mad and abandoned the army. Manny's eyes drifted to the back seat, where Bo played happily with Naomi. When Naomi noticed, she met his gaze with a bright, reassuring smile. Manny exhaled softly, allowing himself a brief moment of relief. Varun noted that it was fortunate Manny had agreed to join them. The CCB's mission, he explained, was to rid the contaminated zone of the red rain entirely and to restore life to what it had once been. Manny asked how that could be accomplished, but Varun promised to brief everyone once they arrived at headquarters. For now, it was enough for Manny to understand that the CCB had both the resources and dependable members to pursue that goal. Manny then asked about the person they were heading to collect. Varun explained that their route took them through District F, which was not as desolate as the abandoned districts K through O, but still far removed from what Manny knew in District C. From there, they would continue on to District H, where the headquarters was located. Dalia had ensured they remained undetectable, so there was no need to worry. Still, Manny found himself wary of Nephilim territory. As the car rolled forward, Bo quietly climbed into the seat beside Manny and pointed towards something outside. Manny turned and his eyes froze in disbelief. A massive monster was locked in battle with someone. The sheer speed of the lone fighter was astonishing, his movements blurring as he struck the monster again and again. The creature roared in rage, but the man only smirked, mocking it with light-hearted taunts as he sprinted along its massive arm towards its head. With a burst of glowing energy swirling around his fist, he launched himself forward. His body flared with the crackling blue aura as he drove the strike into the monster's skull with devastating force. In an instant, the monster collapsed. Everyone in the car stared in shock. Manny could barely believe what he had just witnessed.
Varun, however, spoke with calm certainty. That man, he explained, was the CCB's greatest asset. Though wild and unpredictable, he always got the job done. He was the strongest bleacher alive. His name was Rena.
Somewhere in a tunnel-like chamber, a man knelt low to the ground, pressing his forehead against the floor before a statue carved into the wall. The figure in the stone resembled a girl, her features serene yet commanding. With his head still bowed, the man spoke in a voice heavy with shame, admitting that he remained unworthy to meet her gaze. From the darkness behind him, a Nephilim monster emerged, its form resembling a great wolf. The man acknowledged the beast, explaining that his offering had been destroyed. Turning, he declared that he would deal with the nuisance standing between them. Placing a hand upon the Nephilim's flank, he urged it onward. As he began walking away, his voice grew darker, speaking of how their faith demanded constant vigilance, and he prayed that her days would guide them as they carried out her will. The scene shifted back above ground. Varun and Manny had climbed out of the vehicle. Manny froze in shock at the sight of the slain monster nearby, sweat trickling down his face. He stammered that he had never seen a Nephilim of such size before. Rena landed heavily on the ground, steady and unshaken, and explained that this one was different. He assured the others not to worry. It had already been taken care of. Dalia and Cherry reacted instantly, lunging forward with sharp intent. Rena only smiled at their sudden movement. As they rushed him, he spread his arms wide, greeting them warmly, saying that it had been too long and that he had missed them. Dalia, her voice cold, corrected him, remarking that it had only been a day. Cherry, claws flashing, shouted his intent to repay Rena for their last encounter. Rena responded with teasing dismissal, reminding Cherry that failing to hit him during training did not make him weak, since no one could have landed such a strike. Manny, his family, and Varun stood nearby, silently watching the exchange. With quick precision, Rena chained Dalia and Cherry together with a steel pipe, ordering them to remain in timeout for a while. Turning toward the group, Rena asked Varun who his new companions were. Before Varun could answer, the children stepped forward excitedly, insisting they would introduce themselves. They presented Manny as their big brother, Naomi as their big sister, and Bo as their little brother. Finally, with dramatic flair, they introduced themselves collectively as JoJo. Rena, responding with exaggerated enthusiasm, told them they were the coolest bunch there. The children beamed with pride at his recognition, and soon they and Rena were dancing together in joy while the others watched in silence. Varun eventually interrupted, asking Rena about the situation. Rena ruffled the children's hair and remarked that, since the boss had spoken, it was time to get serious. He explained bluntly that the district was already lost, and the best option was to bring it all down. Varun acknowledged grimly that they had been too late, while Manny, standing beside him, tried to grasp what was meant by lost. Rena clenched his fist, insisting that there had been nothing they could do, as the district was already beyond saving when they first heard of it. Varun added that there was no hope, and it would be best to resolve the matter quickly and move on. Rena agreed without hesitation. Manny stared at them in shock. He demanded to know if they were truly planning to destroy the entire district. Varun confirmed it, stressing that it must be done as soon as possible. Anger rose in Manny's voice as he argued that they could not be serious. He pressed further, asking why they would even consider such an act, while Naomi and the children stood silently listening. With conviction, Manny protested that this place was someone's home. He thought back to his own family, to the house where they had endured the red rain together, and he cried out in disbelief that they could treat its destruction as an option. Rena's expression hardened. He admitted that none of them wanted to do this, but there was no other choice. Manny's eyes widened in alarm as he demanded to know what would happen to the people still living here. Before an answer could come, Varun suddenly grew alert, noticing something amiss. He asked Rena what it was. Rena's face shifted into shock as he sensed it too, warning that something was approaching. Without warning, the ground split open beneath them. Varun ordered everyone to hold on. Naomi and the children shouted Manny's name as he ran to reach them. Then the earth beneath his feet crumbled and he began to fall. The group cried out in horror. Renta rushed forward, but as he neared the edge, Manny raised a hand to stop him. Falling deeper into the darkness, he shouted to Renta to protect the others, no matter what. Renta's eyes narrowed at the command, his silence betraying his thoughts. Manny crashed onto solid ground below. Groaning, he pushed himself up, disoriented, wondering where he had landed. Strange noises echoed through the shadows, and as his eyes adjusted, he saw them, an army of dark monsters waiting ahead. Clenching his fists, he summoned his power, blood swirling around his hands. He thought of Naomi and the children, imagining their fear without him there to protect them. The memory of his apology to them surfaced, when he had once admitted his failure to keep them safe. His eyes blazed now with renewed resolve. He swore to himself that he would not let it happen again. He would protect them. Slamming his fist into his palm, his face burning with anger, he challenged the creatures before him. He was ready for them to come.
Manny charged forward, his power erupting as smoke filled the area. The Nephilim monsters hesitated, peering into the haze and wondering where he had gone. An instant later, Manny burst from the smoke, his eyes blazing as he leapt high into the air. Blood swirled around his clenched fist, amplifying his strength. He brought it crashing down upon a monster, slamming it into the ground with brutal force. The surrounding creatures staggered back, some knocked away by the sheer pressure of his strike. Rising to his feet, Manny radiated a cold, overwhelming presence. Behind him, a massive monster closed in, nearly upon him. Without hesitation, Manny turned, thrusting out his hand. His vision pierced into the creature's body, tracing every vein of flowing blood. He muttered in a low tone, warning it not to move so fast. The beast roared in rage, but Manny lunged forward. His fist smashed into its belly, the impact launching the monster backward through the air. He caught his breath, but blood trickled from his nose. Wiping it across his neck with the back of his arm, he admitted to himself in frustration that there were too many of them. His injuries from before were beginning to resurface. Despite the pain, the blood around his fist swirled once more. He rushed at the advancing creatures with furious resolve. His thoughts burned with disbelief. How could such monsters exist beneath a district filled with people? It made no sense. With another blow, he destroyed a Nephilim in the blink of an eye, but the question lingered in his mind. Not only their presence, but their sheer number beneath a populated city was impossible. Unless... The ground suddenly trembled, interrupting his train of thought. He dropped to one knee, bracing himself as the shaking intensified. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. Footsteps echoed through the shadows. Manny looked up to see a man emerging from the dark, his voice heavy with disdain as he called Manny yet another troublesome sinner. As Manny turned to face him, the stranger continued, remarking that Manny had done quite a number on the children. He claimed he had liberated those poor souls, transforming them into beings of pious devotion, only for Manny to ruin his work. Manny's eyes blazed red as he demanded to know who the man was. The stranger stepped forward among the monsters, who did not so much as move against him. Spreading his arms, he introduced himself as Theo Manberg, one of her loyal apostles, devoted to spreading her will. Theo asked Manny who he was to destroy the gifts he had given these souls. His voice darkened as he pressed the question again, demanding to know who Manny thought he was, to deny them their true, ideal form. Fury erupted inside Manny. His fists clenched, his teeth ground together, and his voice shook with rage. He accused Theo of creating the Nephilim, his tone burning with disbelief and hatred. Theo admitted it without hesitation, claiming it was her divine will. That was enough. Manny lunged, shouting that Theo had murdered innocents for the sake of such lies. Theo remained calm, calling Manny insolent for dismissing her holy will. Manny grabbed him by the collar, raising his fist, as he vowed that he would not allow him to kill anyone else. Theo corrected him coldly, insisting he had not killed, but liberated them, setting them free into their ideal form. As Manny's fist drove forward, Theo moved his finger in a subtle gesture. Instantly, a wall erupted from the ground, blocking the strike. Manny slammed into it with rage, shouting that Theo had done nothing but destroy souls. The wall cracked under the force, but Theo was no longer there. From above, Theo's voice echoed, telling Manny to look upward even if he could not see. Hanging upside down from the ceiling, Theo declared the crimson cloud to be beauty incarnate. A sharp gesture bound Manny's feet in solid rock, locking him in place. Struggling to pull free, Manny cursed in frustration. His thoughts raced. This man was no ordinary bleacher. He prayed his family was safe outside as he forced himself to fight against the restraint. Launching a desperate punch towards Theo, Manny's mind yearned with the grim thought that this might be the moment he was turned into a Nephilim. Then, the ground above shattered. A blur of speed descended so fast Theo could barely track it. The Nephilim monsters trembled, their bodies shaking in recognition. A voice broke through the chaos, sharp and filled with anger. It admitted the arrival had taken longer than expected. It was Renta. Blue flashes swirled violently around his body as he smashed Theo into the wall. His expression was fierce, his words sharp with fury as he finally confronted the one responsible for the devastation. Renta declared that he had found him, Theo Manberg.
Renta and Manny stood their ground. Renta admitted to Theo that he had suspected it might be him, though he hadn't wanted to believe it. Manny asked if Renta knew him, and Renta replied that only by name. He added with frustration that Theo's reputation was shattering his own image as the popular one. Renta then explained to Manny that Theo Manberg was the notorious bleacher who had once worked with the army to construct the wall encircling the contaminated zone. Because of him, ordinary people were trapped in this hellish place. Rumors claimed he had left the army, joined the apostles, and converted to atheism. Manny wondered aloud what atheism was and who the apostles were. Renta responded with a hint of mockery, suggesting Manny must have been living under a rock. Manny retorted with the same remark, but Renta pressed further, asking how often Manny had even left his house. Manny admitted he had mostly stayed at home. Suddenly, Manny remembered something important and panicked, realizing he did not have time for this confrontation. He urgently asked Renta about his siblings and the others. Renta stepped forward as light began swirling around him, assuring Manny that they were safe. His blue aura flared, his eyes blazing as he ordered Manny to step back, declaring that their fight was not yet finished. Theo rose to his feet, denying the accusation that he had converted. Manny watched him in silence, his gaze sharp. The memory shifted to the day the crimson cloud first appeared, when Theo had stood watching the sky. Since the first raindrop, which he called the first blessing upon the world, he had considered himself a loyal follower. Anger surged through him, and his powers erupted, pulling rocks from the ground to swirl upward. He demanded that his faith not be sullied by petty rumors. Renta smirked, questioning why, if that were true, Theo had become the army's weapon and built the wall in the first place. Theo rose into the air, his feet encased in stone as the Nephilim monster roared beneath him. He declared that the wall had been part of her will all along. Narrowing his eyes at Renta, he demanded how someone like him, a bleacher blessed so greatly, could fail to recognize her will. He added that while he himself was unworthy to question her, he would not allow Renta to obstruct her wishes. At his command, the Nephilim lunged at Renta and Manny. Renta clenched his fist and told Manny to watch closely, suggesting he might learn something. Manny protested, insisting Renta could not face Theo alone. But Renta cut him off, acknowledging that one should not fight alone if a trustworthy Peem stood beside him. Then his aura flared brighter, his power swirling violently, as he declared he was not alone. The spirits of those who had been wronged were already cheering him on. Theo's voice grew darker as he called Renta the greatest blasphemer, the worst sinner among bleachers. Renta's fist shone with fierce energy as he spat back that Theo was a sick man hiding behind the guise of a higher will while turning people into Nephilim. Rage overtook him as he lunged, shouting that Theo believed such horrors justified killing everyone in the district. Manny froze, stunned by the revelation. With a burst of light, Renta struck down several monsters, his power so dense the details were almost impossible to see. As he prepared to strike Theo, his opponent shifted just enough to evade the blow, insisting that the people had only been living in constant fear. Using his power, Theo pulled stone from the ground and shaped it into a weapon. He claimed all he had done was force people to accept her grace, eliminating their fears of the red rain and crimson cloud.
Renta quickly shifted into a defensive stance as Theo swung the stone weapon at him. The impact shook the walls, cracking them under the pressure. Manny clenched his fists and whispered, "They're on completely different levels." Blocking the strike, Renta smirked, remarking that the spirits were furious and wanted him to punish Theo. With a confident smile, he added, "He never disappoints his fans," declaring it was time to raise the music. Theo growled that he had heard enough and widened his arms, trapping Renta inside a prison of stone. The sphere closed around him, but in the next instant his glowing hand burst through, shattering the prison. He grabbed Theo by the collar, remarking coldly, he usually avoids touching other men, but since Theo had come so close, he would make an exception. Power intensified around Renta as he held Theo, the stone shell crumbling to pieces. With eyes blazing, he challenged Theo to try turning him into a monster. The force bent Theo to his knees as the ground shook and began collapsing around them. Manny barely avoided a falling boulder as Theo stared in shock, muttering, "It could not be," questioning why she had blessed Renta with so much power. Drawing back his fist, Renta told him not to worry, that he could ask her directly once Renta sent him to her. But before he could strike, a drop of red rain fell on Theo's forehead. Theo cried out that it was a sign that she had not forsaken him. The ground trembled as rocks began to cling to Theo's body. Renta watched in alarm as he muttered, "She is ready." His body lifted from the ground as monsters fused into his body, merging with his form. The red rain fell harder as Theo declared she was accepting him as her seraphim, her angel. Both Renta and Manny were stunned as the Nephilim monster tried to escape, but was pulled into Theo's transforming body. With a violent burst, the ground split open, rocks levitated, and Theo emerged as a massive, terrifying monster.
Outside, the red rain poured down, but a massive umbrella shielded the car where Varun and Manny's family waited. Naomi urged the children to remain inside, warning them that it was still raining. Inside the car, Jojo turned to Naomi with worry in his voice, asking if Manny would be all right. Varun reassured the children, explaining that their brother could handle himself and that Renta had gone to bring him back. Outside, Cherry fought against the advancing Nephilim monsters, shouting in frustration that Renta had left them alone to deal with the threat. Varun responded calmly, reminding Cherry that Renta had entrusted him with protecting the car and asking whether he was saying he couldn't handle it. Cherry cut down another creature and retorted that he had never said that, insisting that Varun could sit and watch because he had things under control. Varun admitted Cherry wasn't doing badly, but added that he would need to push harder if he wanted to catch up. Nearby, Dalia stood silently atop a mound of Nephilim corpses. Varun asked her if she was holding up and if she could continue. She gave a quiet nod of agreement while the children inside stared at her with awe. Cherry suddenly sniffed the air, sensing something. A larger wave of monsters was closing in. Varun warned that more were coming, then suggested that Cherry and Dalia should try working together. The two exchanged glances but quickly dismissed the idea. Dalia muttered that Cherry would only get in her way, while Cherry growled that this battle was his alone. Varun could only wonder when they would learn the value of cooperation, that even if someone had the strength to fight and win, victories felt meaningless without others to share them with. The two continued their rampage. Cherry tore through the creatures with his claws, moving with frenzied violence, while Dalia unleashed devastating bursts of magical power. But the monsters only grew in number, eventually surrounding the car and closing in. Inside, the children panicked, believing they were about to die, but Naomi reassured them that Manny would return. At that moment, Bo stepped forward, lighting a cigar and placing himself between the children and danger. Jojo and Naomi clung to him, convinced he would protect them. Outside, Cherry fought desperately, muttering in frustration that there seemed to be no end to the monsters. Dalia, also straining against the horde, questioned why so many Nephilim had gathered and why they were targeting the car specifically. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. Varun's eyes narrowed as he sensed something familiar. Cherry asked sharply what was happening, but he only muttered in a low voice that it was a power he recognized. The tremor slowed, and Dalia noticed the monsters had vanished. A vast shadow fell over them. She and Cherry turned to see a monstrous figure towering above, Theo now transformed into something truly terrifying. The sight left Varun, Dalia, and Cherry frozen in shock. Dalia whispered in disbelief, wondering what it was, while Cherry muttered that Renta had already killed this thing. Varun corrected him, stating grimly that this was something new. He then pointed out that the Nephilim from earlier were merging into the beast, fusing with it to increase its size.
Inside the car, Naomi and the children broke into cold sweats, fear plain on their faces. Cherry cursed under his breath at the sight of the merging, while Dalia confirmed Varun's observation that the monsters were indeed combining into a greater form. At that moment, Manny and Renta appeared. Renta supported Manny by holding his arm over his shoulder. Manny smiled faintly, relieved to see everyone, but his words were cut short when the ground split beneath the car, pulling it down into the earth. From inside the car, Varun shouted for Renta to get them out quickly. Renta hesitated for a moment as the massive monster roared above. Manny placed a hand firmly on his shoulder, urging him to go save the others. Renta met his gaze in silence as Manny stepped forward to stand with Cherry and Dalia. The monster loomed, its countless mouths and eyes radiating overwhelming power. Manny raised a hand in a silent gesture, giving Renta a thumbs up without looking back, declaring that he and the others would handle the fight. Renta smirked faintly, then, in a burst of speed, leapt into the hole after the car, leaving Manny, Dalia, and Cherry to face Theo's new horrifying form. As Renta descended with a grin, he thought to himself, they grow up so fast. Manny, meanwhile, slammed his fist into his palm, rallying the others. Together with Dalia and Cherry at his side, he declared that it was time to take the monster down.